Brick, what's a locker room like? What after something like this, and to have to play the next day, and like the difficulty of putting your emotions in check, and we kind of touched on it already, like pull off a win, make a statement for your team. And Swayman after the game even said kind of build off of those guys' legacy that the team had to move on from.
Yeah, I liked a lot of what both the players had to say, and I think it gives you a good glimpse into what professional sports is like on the emotional side. You know, you have to compartmentalize, you have to take those emotions, you have to park it because you got to go out and do a job, and both those players referenced that. I also like the fact that Swayman said, look, this is what we signed up for. This is the business part of playing professional hockey. And even though we don't like it and emotionally it hurts and we're cut to the core because we've gone to battle, so to speak, with these brothers, because you truly are like a family when you spend this amount of time together and rely on one another to get a job done, and you all have the same goal in mind, and you got to have that closeness if you're going to be successful. So it hurts when players go out the door, but you know, as part of the leadership group, and that's something Swayman also touched on that we've already talked about, McAvoy, Pastrnak, and Swayman. You know, Swayman throws a shutout. And the Bruins win. They beat a good Tampa team, and they came together in quick fashion and played good hockey. And he's right. They have to sustain that because it's still all about winning. The guys that are in the locker room, they understand what's going on. They understand what the Bruins are doing. You know, the draft capital and the deals that they made, and the established guys that went to other teams, and it's going to affect the quality of your roster. But you can still win games when you come together, and that's what they're going to have to do. And that, you know, it's required by leadership of players and leadership of the coaching staff. You know, Joe Sacco's got to do a good job of keeping these guys where they need to be focused and make sure that their habits and their details are very good. And you hope that the new guys coming in, they look at it as an opportunity. You know, I know when I got traded, it wasn't a trade deadline. It was early in the year, but I've experienced that emotion of I'm not wanted to pivoting and say, no, I'm wanted by some other team and I'm valued by another team. So the players have to deal with that themselves as individuals, but as players that are still in that Bruins locker room that are considered the leaders, it's their job. It's on their shoulders to make sure this is a smooth transition.
Absolutely. And you touched on leadership and one of the hardest conversations that take place, especially now that it seems like the NHL is moving on quickly from guys, and moving captains around is becoming a little less staggering, a little less shocking. We've seen so much of it in the last this season alone. I mean, from July 1 to now. So, of course, that brings the next question. They already said that they're not going to name a C moving forward for the rest of the season. But is there a guy that just kind of stands out to you a little bit more that can potentially put this weight on his shoulders?
Well, at the beginning of the year when we had our meetings here at Nesson and we talked about storylines for the upcoming season, one of my biggest storylines that I wanted to share, that I wanted to explore, and that I was hopeful was going to happen was that Charlie McAvoy would emerge as a star in this league, that he would be a dominant force on the blue line. He would challenge for the Norris Trophy. He'd play 25 minutes a night, and when he knew when to take over a game, he would take over a game. And that leadership and that confidence and that growth in a star player in the making was going to happen this year. It hasn't happened for a number of reasons. You know, the team has played poorly. He's dealt with some injuries, and here we are at the trade deadline with a lot of veteran good players that are leaving. So that is my expectation, Kasey. I would expect that Charlie McAvoy is the guy that they're probably targeting, that they want to wear the C. I'm not sure that's where they'll go. You know, is he ready for it? Is he matured enough as both as a player and as a person to understand what's required of that job? I know Brad Marchand talked about it when he became the captain, and everybody expected him to be the captain. But, you know, as much as you're prepared for it, the challenges that present themselves on a daily basis, it can affect you if you're not strong enough and if you're not ready for it. But I expect, from where I'm sitting, that that's the direction the Bruins are headed.
I like it. I think a number of fans can get behind that storyline. But for Bruins storylines, NHL storylines, and more hockey, make sure that you continue to stay tuned with us at Hockey Hub. You're watching Hockey Hub now. If you like what you're hearing, if you want to get more insight in the players, Bruins locker room, as well as the NHL as a whole, make sure to like and subscribe the show. Hockey Hub can be found on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music, or wherever else you get and enjoy your podcast. All right, we're pivoting perfectly into some other pillars that were moved on from when all this trade transactioning took place. And I can't wait to get your insight on this, actually, Brick, because you and I got to chat the last time we did Hockey Hub together. And one of the guys that were moved on from, Brandon Carlo, there was a number of fans, there was a number of spectators and analysts that said he still had more to give this specific roster, to give this Bruins team. So what did you make of them moving on from Charlie Coyle as well as Brandon Carlo?
Yeah, my immediate reaction and my immediate emotion is disappointed because they're all quality people. We have the good fortune to be around these guys on a daily basis, travel with them, stay in the same hotels, on the plane, and you get to know the guys, and you keep your distance, but you get to know them as people, and they're high-quality people. And Brandon Carlo, just a nice person, good guy to talk to, very thoughtful. His life isn't entirely hockey. There's a lot going on in the world that's worth discussing, and he was one of those guys that you can gauge a conversation. And he was involved. I think he was one of the player reps for the union. So, he had his morals, he had his ethics, and he had his value system, and I appreciated all that. Now, as far as the player, I don't like to move on from guys that you drafted and developed that I think are good players. 6'5", great skater, can defend, good stick, good penalty killer, a guy that you'd want to get matchups with some of the top offensive guys on the opposing team. He didn't have a good year. And again, you're guilty by association, because the team did not meet expectations, have not met expectations yet this year. You're affected by that. Your play slips a little bit. The question I think the Bruins had, or I'm surmising, is, has he peaked as a player? It was a step backward this year. He still defended pretty well, but he wasn't making that first good pass out of the defensive zone. His gaps weren't as tight, and he got victimized sometimes by getting beat to the outside when you try to overplay the middle. Whatever it is, his game wasn't up to his own personal standard, and I just hope that they don't think that that he had peaked as a player, because I don't think he has.
Right.
And I think once he gets entrenched and established there in Toronto, that's a nice pickup for the Leafs.
Yeah, and I think that Toronto kind of stayed within the identity they're trying to build over there by being able to attain a guy like Carlo. You already talked about Charlie Coyle and, the presence that he'll have in Colorado. So I think that perfectly places us to some of the newbies on the block. Casey Mittelstadt comes over from Colorado, joins this Bruins roster. I've been a fan of his career in a number of ways, and I know that he had some inconsistency in his play. He kind of had to jump into a bit of a fractured roster in Colorado. They had so many injuries, players coming in and out. His role didn't particularly change, but his ability to step up maybe did. But we've seen him be able to step up in tough moments for Colorado. You kind of got a glimpse of him versus Tampa Bay. What did you see? He picks up a point. He's a guy who can kind of help create those passing lanes. I love his aggression with getting to the net. I think he's very creative in that sense to help these guys get some action going on in the middle of the ice and start getting plays going in the neutral zone. So what did you make of the addition of Mittelstadt thus far?
Well, when I think of the player, I picture him in Buffalo, and he came in with a lot of expectations. He was going to be a great player coming out of college, and he had a sick skill set. He could pass. He had great vision, good offensive mind. A lot was put on his shoulders, and Buffalo's been a mess for over a decade, and he didn't thrive there. And I think it's a lack of leadership really that's hurt Buffalo all these years, because it's a great hockey market. I think everybody wants them to be good, and everybody's lost for an explanation. They've been through coaches and GMs. It's just not a good situation. They can't make the postseason. So I think he was affected by that as a young player. There wasn't any guidance for him, and I think that hurt him. And I think he was miscast a little bit in Colorado. They moved on from Kadri after they had won the Cup, and I think they wanted Mittelstadt to be that 2C behind McKinnon. I don't think that really was his calling with that group. So the hope is that at the age that he's at, what is he, 26 years old? So he's entering the prime of his career. He really is. Ages 26 or 27 to say 31, 32 is really the prime. You've matured physically. You understand what your skill sets are, what your limitations are, how you best fit, how you need to play to be highly successful, and you really start to figure those things out at that point in your career, and I'm hopeful that's where he's headed. I liked what I saw in the one game that he's played. He moved the puck, just even a simple play that doesn't show up on the score sheet where, he's under duress in the defensive zone, and he makes a good little 10-foot pass in traffic to get you out of your own zone. That doesn't lead to anything on a stat sheet, but it's noticeable if you're watching the game, because that's the way the Bruins need to play, especially if you're going to be in the middle. But he's a guy that can play the wing, he can play center ice. You get a good, if you find a good fit for him, somebody that he's going to have instant chemistry with. It could be just one guy, or it could be a line. I think he's going to help your power play because of the things I said earlier about his vision, his ability to move the puck. I think he'll gain confidence, and I think that the hope is that he will find a nice home in the prime of his career in Boston, and it shows in the way he plays in all three zones, but more importantly, offense. The Bruins are looking for more skill, more speed, more offense, a better power play, all the things that have haunted them this year has put them in the position that they're in. I think this kid can help you in a number of those areas.
Yeah, I feel like a few fans were like, we're not really hearing the theme strong two-way player from this guy, but the capability is there, but he's going to add to the offensive structure, and you make a great point to note something that you probably don't see initially unless you're focused on the game from an analytical perspective. Those passes to help them get out of the zone. That's kind of an expectation for Charlie Coyle. Help the Bruins get out of their zone. Help the Bruins not be so pinned. And that's typically an asset, a skill set to his game. But Mittelstadt has the same capability. And we kind of saw a quick connection between him and Koepke. Or was that just the fact that Koepke's growing so much in his game?
Yeah, Cole Koepke's a great story, and I know they're all Minnesota guys, right? So they knew each other, and Lettieri on the right side. That line was really good against Tampa, and you'd like to give Mittelstadt credit for it. But yeah, Koepke's got good wheels. Had the setback when he had the head injury, when he took that big hit, getting the puck out of the zone, a month or two ago. That can derail you a little bit, but he's played his way up to the third line. He's a good skater. He's a good student of the game. He takes coaching. He wants to be here. He wants to be impactful. And maybe you get some instant chemistry, like we said. You never know. And yeah, when he brings his skating game, Koepke, net drive, get in on the forecheck, pressure on the back check because you use your skating ability. He can be a highly effective guy. He wants to be here. He understands the situation the Bruins are in. So why not play my best hockey of the year right now in order to be part of the equation moving forward?